Thursday welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we are with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. You can find us by typing in lcpioneers.com/live. It'll take you right to our Facebook page. And of course, archive to watch inside the fan zone on our website and at youtube.com/lcpios, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from throughout the Lewis and Clark College community. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Goff. I'm the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We're the Pioneers based out of Portland, Oregon, and members of the Northwest Conference, a 9-team conference with institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington competing at the NCAA Division III level. So over 430 institutions nationwide, a chance for our student athletes to compete on the highest stage across the country. And of course, in certainly non-pandemic times, our overseas study program, quite robust, a chance for our students and student athletes alike to explore the globe with experiential liberal arts education. Pim Trouerbach will be our guest, an alumnus of men's tennis, class of 2018. We'll talk to Pim about what happened post-graduation, and then obviously get that origin story too. What was it about Lewis and Clark that brought him to Palatine Hill? And then certainly some moments that he remembers most from whether it's tennis or academics, his experience on Palatine Hill. We invite you to get involved with the program. You can do so through our Facebook Live comments. Those are always active during the show. Or if you have a suggestion for a future guest, or you see our schedule and you have a question but you know you can't make the show, you can always email us, sports@lclark.edu. And of course, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. LC Pioneers, our handle on both of those platforms. We continue to update you specific to athletics and COVID-19. You can find information about that on our website, lcpioneers.com. Type in lcpioneers.com/COVID for more information, specifically whether it's coming from the NCAA or the Northwest Conference specific to athletics. And our schedules are up to date, but also ever changing. So if you click on some of the spring sports schedules, women's soccer set to compete in the spring, but typically a fall sport. Those schedules are up to date at lcpioneers.com, and you can get more information about streaming and such at lcpioneers.com/COVID. It's a moving target, but we'll do our best to keep you updated as we go along with the pandemic continuing into the third week of the spring 2021 semester. And I mentioned our YouTube playlist. That continues to be updated as well. Past interviews, including with our guest on Tuesday. Mark Petrock was our guest yesterday. We'll have both of those available to watch on demand at youtube.com/lcpios. And the show now is approaching the 1-year anniversary, believe it or not, because we started on the last day of March 2020. Even with competition resuming, we plan to continue doing lcpioneers.com live, albeit we may do it twice a week with multiple guests per show instead of just one show and one guest. Nonetheless, we're excited to talk to our guest today. That is the class of 2018 graduate of Lewis and Clark men's tennis. We welcome Pim Trouerbach to the show. Pim, thanks for taking the time to join us on this Thursday and catch up and see what's happened since you've left Palatine Hill. But like I always do with most of our guests, let's start with that origin story, right? What was it about Lewis and Clark that originally attracted you to compete for the Pios?
Yeah, so I was living after high school, I went to live at a tennis academy. I had dreams of doing computer engineering and playing for D1. I quickly realized that a lot of the colleges don't really allow you to do engineering and Division I athletics just due to the rigorous activity for the engineering programs. And I was living at the tennis academy for about 9 months, playing tournaments every weekend, traveling, and I got pretty burnt out, to be honest. I was playing 8 hours a day in Southern California. It was very hot. I got to be really sick of hot weather, honestly, and I was pretty burnt out from traveling that much, and I really just wanted to get a start on my career. Like I was good at tennis, but wasn't good enough to go professional. And Lewis and Clark really fit the bill in that I had friends there. It was beautiful weather. I'm a big fan of trees and rain and fog. It's my absolute favorite. And yeah, when I went to visit, I played ping pong for about 3 hours with Kian Hindle and Kay. And that was just a great time. And they really showed me that it was a real team community, and that everyone really got along, and that's exactly what I wanted to go into.
And so you get to Portland, right? And you're talking about these trees and the campus and all of that stuff. Did it meet your expectations? Did it live up to that? What do you still tell people about the Portland area?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Portland is it's probably my favorite city. Just the atmosphere that Lewis and Clark had as a whole is just such a beautiful campus. I very much enjoyed that I could go walk around, and I could walk like 5 minutes from my dorm and just be surrounded by trees and quiet and just have time to reflect.
Yeah, and the campus, continuously gets rated as one of the best in the country, and that was something that you had the opportunity to experience. And now you're back in the Portland area. I want to get to that in a moment, but let's start with just kind of that story post-graduation. What did you do after leaving Lewis and Clark?
Yeah, so I got my degree in computer science. I focused on computer security, so I started off learning how to hack computers and all that, and then kind of moved into the defense side of things. I really wanted to be on the good side and really try and defend systems as much as possible. And I did a good amount of activities during my 4 years at Lewis and Clark that helped me gain experience in how to defend networks and things like that. And that landed me a job at GoDaddy, being a security engineer on their threat intelligence team in Seattle, Washington.
And what was it about, security in that specific industry that appealed to you?
I was really into cryptography when I started at Lewis and Clark. Quickly learned that cryptography was too difficult for me. So bought a book on hacking. And I just thought it was the coolest thing, like being able to make your own Facebook page and have people put in credentials and then like get into other systems. But eventually that kind of wore off. And defense is just so fascinating because it's very much a cat and mouse game of going back and forth between adversaries. Like you make a change in the network, you see them respond and try and get around the tactic that you put in place. And it's a very fast-moving field, and it's very relaxed. Like there's not much of like when people think of information security, they don't think of suits and ties. Like it's people like just in sweats and just getting after it every day and putting in hours, and everyone's working together, trying to make the best of the situation. And it's just a good group of people.
Our guest is Pim Trouerbach on lcpioneers.com live, a class of 2018 graduate from Lewis and Clark men's tennis. And now you're back in the Portland area. How about that? You chose there for undergrad, and now you're back working in Portland. What was it that brought you back professionally?
Yeah, so I worked at GoDaddy for about a year and a half on their threat intelligence team, writing tools and systems to detect malware on customers' hosting boxes, because we would host customer websites, and I would write systems to hunt for that. And I really started to get into some of the very big malware groups out there, like that are managed by 80 plus people that have hundreds of thousands of machines infected, causing millions of dollars in damage. And I didn't really get to focus on that too much at GoDaddy, but it's something that I was really passionate about, and I saw the damage that it did firsthand. So I wanted to be at a place where I could actually work on that. And Nike being, and I ended up working for Nike, and Nike being the size that they are, I have visibility into probably most of the malware that is being shared around the world and that's being sent to people. So I really have fantastic visibility, and I get to then, and Nike also allows me the flexibility to work with researchers outside of Nike. So I work with people in Europe, in America, and just all over the world. And that was really what convinced me that I would have the freedom to do the work that I want to do, and that I get to be in my favorite city.
Well, and not only that, I mean, Lewis and Clark's proximity to Nike is always something that we like to share, because student athletes get to rep the Nike brand while at Lewis and Clark, and then just 15 miles from campus, you're to Nike World headquarters. Was it always part of a desire to kind of work back into the athletics realm, even though doing it from a computer perspective?
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. Like I really, like I've been a Nike athlete, I guess, my whole life. Like always wearing Nike everything. My favorite tennis player growing up with Roger Federer, and he's been sponsored for Nike for quite a while. So yeah, it was really just like I kind of just applied out of a whim that, man, it would be so cool to work at Nike, like being around all these athletes, and like me being a athletic person in and of itself, just it really aligned with my interests. And just being in world headquarters, I mean, it's so inspiring seeing all the things that athletes have done, and me being an athlete myself, it just like I know to an extent the work that they put in. And it just really felt like the right place where I could continue being athletic and working out, but also then being able to do the thing that I love for a career.
So as you went through computer science, but also some other areas where Lewis and Clark might have helped you prepare for a career in what you're doing now, what were some of the things that stood out, whether it was specific to the computer science curriculum or whether it was extra things that kind of spun off of the curriculum?
Yeah, so Lewis and Clark is actually one of the few schools in the country, or the few liberal arts schools in the country that has a cybersecurity concentration. Now, back in my freshman or sophomore year, I knew of 3 students who were actually interested in cybersecurity. And by the end of my senior year, there was at least 10 or 20. So there was definitely some growth there. And we had one professor who, he's still there, Jens Mache. He is kind of the forerunner at Lewis and Clark for security, always trying to get people into security topics. Every year he does research on security education and how you can better teach security concepts to students. And he really pushed me to sign up for a lot of these competitions that I didn't think I was prepared for. My senior year or my sophomore year, he pushed me to compete in the National Cyber League, which is a collegiate competition based on cybersecurity. So it's a lot of like cracking passwords, attacking websites, gathering information about people and things like that. And the class he was teaching a security class at the time that I was in, and that really prepared me for this National Cyber League. And I ended up placing in the top 150 that year.
Yeah, I mean that's a really amazing story because you have the opportunity to compete. And did you continue on with that into your upperclassmen years?
Yeah, so I did the National Cyber League my sophomore, junior, and senior year. My junior year, I really pushed to score as high as possible, and I ranked top 10 in the country. But that was with 6 months of doing security competitions every weekend. And I think it was sophomore year, I went to do a security competition that was actually in person. And I had to miss a tennis match for it. And at the time, I was playing 3 or 4 singles and 1 doubles. So it was and it was against Whitman. So it was a big match for us. But I talked to the coaches. I was like, hey, like I really need to go to this competition. And it was funny because they let me go to the competition, and I felt really bad the whole time that I was letting my team down. And at the competition, you aren't allowed to have your phones out. Like they just take all of your phones, and it's a 10-hour event. So we started at 8 a.m. and ended 10 hours after that. And after I look at my phone after 10 hours, I have like 130 text messages from the tennis team. And they're like, our group chat changed to like, we did it. And there were pictures of the scoreboard against Whitman being 5 for Lewis and Clark and 4 for Whitman. And I just couldn't believe it. Like the one time that I missed a match for Lewis and Clark, they ended up beating Whitman. I think Whitman at the time was top 20 in the country. So that is still held over me to this day that I have not beaten Whitman, but the rest of the tennis team has.
It's Pim Trouerbach joining us on lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream. We're with you Tuesday through Friday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live and available to watch on demand at youtube.com/lcpios. And I find it interesting with volunteer opportunities with people I talk to on the show. Sometimes they're closely related to the type of work that they do as a professional, and sometimes they're completely different. With the volunteer work you do, it sounds like you're more in that former category. Give us some insight on what that's like.
Yeah, so my passion in life, like I can say, end to end is going to be cybersecurity. Like there's nothing that gets me as excited and interested. So I spend a lot of my volunteer time tracking criminal groups, and I'm on a team of about 20 other people outside of Nike, and we were specifically tracking one group for the last 3 years, tracking every update that they made to their infrastructure, tracking the changes that they made in their malware. And recently, 2 weeks ago, the whole operation was taken down by law enforcement. So there were arrests made in Ukraine. We were really on the intelligence gathering side of that because we were the experts, having been tracking this piece of malware for 3 years. But yeah, that specific malware had 600,000 infections across the world and caused millions of dollars in damage to various organizations and corporations. So that's one of the things that I've been focusing on for the last year and a half. But now that that person's been arrested, I've been focusing more of my time on mentoring students in cybersecurity, because when I was starting, there weren't many resources for learning about the field and learning about the defense side of cybersecurity. Everyone always hears about the hacking, but no one really talks about the defense of it. And I really struggled. I had to do a lot of reading online of just random blogs, and it was difficult. There were a lot of times where I'd go down paths and spend a week or two on something and realize I was doing it completely wrong, when someone more experienced could tell me when someone more experienced could have told me that I was going down the wrong path. So really trying to make it so that there are people who are coming into the field and have the support that they need.
That's, in a way, a very good segue to transition into more of the tennis specifics of your time at Lewis and Clark, and that includes coaching staff, right? That's a big key to the mentorship when you're a student athlete. When you look back at your time at LNC as a member of the tennis team, and if I ask you about the coaches, what comes to mind?
Yeah, when I joined, we had a fantastic coaching staff. We had Pat Dreves, Jimmy Chow, Marco Pineda, Panhera, and Jonathan Stark. I was so amazed that we had 5 or 6 coaches for a 15-person team, I think it was at the time. And they were all such fantastic coaches. Like Jonathan Stark himself was a professional tennis player, I believe won a Grand Slam or 2 in doubles. So just immense talent across all of the coaches. Panera was part of the Davis Cup team. Pat is a fantastic coach. Same with Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, working with them every day and having them giving me feedback on my game was extremely helpful. And they're all just fantastic coaches.
Well, and you did a great job of kind of giving us that inside look at the Whitman moment. When you describe what it's like to be part of the team at Lewis and Clark, what are some of your favorite memories, or even a great story that comes to mind?
Regarding tennis, that's probably my favorite story, in that I truly thought that they were playing a prank on me, but that was not the case. Let's see, some other stories. Yeah, I don't know if there's too many things that really come to mind, but I mean, like, to this day, like, I miss so much being able to travel with all of my friends and going to eat together and staying in hotels and like playing matches and traveling. Like, all of that is so much fun, and I absolutely despise staying in hotels and traveling when by myself. But just being around all those guys makes it so much fun, and it really just feels like a vacation every time you go and travel.
Do you still play tennis?
Yeah, I play with Gordon and Brendan Barrows.
Oh, so former teammates of yours.
Yeah.
And is it competitive or more recreational?
We play a lot of the same games that we would play in college, but we don't play sets too often. But yeah, we when the weather's nice, we'll play 3 times a week or so. And we found a local player who was also trained by Pat and Marco. So he's been joining in and hitting with us, and he played for Mona Pitzer, and we played against him actually our sophomore and senior year. But yeah, I mean, tennis is definitely the one place I can go escape if I have a not a great day at work, I can always go and ask Brendan Barrows if he wants to go hit, or we can just go talk about tennis and all that good stuff.
Do the Barrows still have it?
Yeah, they are both quite good. They both play tournaments consistently. They play father-son tournaments. They both played in tennis leagues pre-COVID. So yes, they definitely still have their skills.
Well, Pim, it's been an absolute delight to catch up with you on the show, hear all the passion that you have for the work that you do, including, one of those biggest accomplishments going through that volunteer side of things. Pim Trouerbach, thanks so much for joining us today on lcpioneers.com Live.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great conversation today and great insight into a profession that, I didn't know until Pim and I, discussed in this conversation. One of the only liberal arts education, higher education institutions to have that emphasis on cybersecurity. Like, how neat is that, right? Because I've long spoken about one of my favorite things about Lewis and Clark is the experiential nature of the liberal arts education. Sure, you're going to, graduate with a degree in this specialty, right? But what other experiences do you have along the way? Whether it's within a class in that major, or is it something that you do outside of that but still in academics? Or is there something within student life, overseas study? There's all these different ways, and I didn't know about the cybersecurity thing until Pim brought that up, and I'm so thankful that he did, because that is something that I've noticed is whether it's pre-professional programs at Lewis and Clark, now some of the new minors, whether it's health studies or entrepreneurship, right? There are lots of options being so close to downtown Portland, some of those other institutions like Nike or OHSU, right? These are places that students at Lewis and Clark can gain hands-on experience. And Pim experienced a lot of that and now is back in Portland working for Nike in cybersecurity. That was a lot of fun to catch up with Pim. All right, be sure to check out our lcpioneers.com/live link. That takes you straight to Facebook. We will have our updated schedule as soon as it's available. Tomorrow, no live show. We'll have a re-air, but we'll be back with you on Tuesday next week. Not sure how soon we'll shift to having 2 shows per week and 2 guests per show. That's still to be determined, but as soon as we do, we will let you know. Until then, still plan on Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And if you miss anything, go to lcpioneers.com and click on the fan zone. You'll see lcpioneers.com live there, or on our YouTube page, youtube.com/lcpios. So until we see you again live next week, but tomorrow for a re-air, we certainly appreciate taking the time to join us today. For Pim Trouerbach joining us as well, it was a lot of fun. I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks so much for having fun with us today, and we will see you again soon for more lcpioneers.com Live, presented by PioStream, and soon on PioStream with some live sports again as well. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, I'm Nick Lombardi. Something I've learned at Winterim this year is how to communicate a vision.
My biggest takeaway from Winterim is probably the networking. Getting to talk to everybody, connect with people for the future is one of the most valuable things, and I did Winterim last year, came back for more this year.
I think a way in which my liberal arts education has really helped me and my group formulate our ideas is that concept of critical thinking and having many different backgrounds, me being an econ major and my 2 group mates being chemistry majors. We really get that well-rounded background, well-rounded ideas.
I think overall it's absolutely worth doing. You find yourself not only being more prepared for, say, this next semester, on top of being more prepared for life in general.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.